Yes, the Blues lost the Minnesota Wild. Yes, there are bigger problems that we need to talk about.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk about that 6-4 loss to the Minnesota Wild. I rank that game a D, okay? Binner doesn't look so great as of lately, and I have some bigger concerns. And then, of course, the Anaheim Ducks tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, January 8th, which means that we're officially 2 months away from the trade deadline because that is on March 8th. So as the new year begins, be on the lookout for some potential moves that could be happening across the NHL. All right, my friends. So let's talk about this game last night because, at least to me, I thought this was a D type of game. Okay. So, right off the bat, the Wild score about 1 minute in, setting the tone. By the way, Binner was starting in net last night, if I didn't say that. And literally less than a minute after that, the Wild make it 2-0. So now I'm kind of in this panic mode because I knew in the back of my head yesterday when I did the podcast, and I spoke to you about this, I thought the Wild were going to win, okay? However, I did not expect the Wild to be leading the Blues 2-0 less than 3 minutes into the contest. That to me was a concern. And I think at least, and I'll get into this in a little bit, but I think for me, I'm just over this experiment with Tyler Tucker. I'm over it. Just trade him and just acquire some better defensive talent. Binner, I just don't know. I don't know. I'll talk about that in my next segment, but let me continue on. So Bushi did score. He scored his 10th goal of the season, a little low for him, but he cut the deficit in half. Luckily, at the top of the second period, the Blues were on a power play, and Ruzi was able to score on the power play and tied up the game, which was really good. Well, things began treading the Blues' direction. I love how hockey works in a way, right? Jake Neighbors scores, makes it 3-2, less than a minute after Kyrie's goal. And then a few short minutes later, Robert Thomas is able to score and make it 4-2. Oh, the tables have turned. This is the part in the game where I give it the good graces because I was really negative, but Nail the Blues were able to come back from 2-0 and score 4 goals in a row, which at least to me against a team like the Wild was kind of crazy. But again, Jake Neighbors, not so good of a season for him. It's the midway point. Haven't expected much from him this season because he hasn't shown much. Robert Thomas, I know he was injured, but Tomer is fantastic, so never can hate on him. Um, the problem is that the Blues scored 4 goals in a row. So you would think, there's no way the Wild could score 4 goals in a row, right? No way. Well, they did. Okay, so Minnesota is able to get 1 goal at the end. Well, not the end, but like the midway point of the second frame. So like the end of like the midway point of the game. By the way, Marc-Andre Fleury ended up going in net for the Wild. So that happened too. He played like the last 35 minutes. Then we have a ton of goals, third period, a minute in. Matt Boldy, he's always an issue. He scored. And then obviously, the Blues have an empty net score on that, and that makes it 6-4. So it was ugly. When the Blues looked like they were about to redeem themselves, they didn't. The opposite happened, and they got completely smoked by the Wild. But I think what is the bigger problem is just last night, and this was really frustrating to me. Saad was on the ice for 3 Wild goals. Bushi was on the ice for 3 Wild goals. Tomer was on the ice for 4 Wild goals. It just was not a good night for those guys in particular. Um, Tyler Tucker had 11 minutes on ice, which was the lowest amount of ice time defensively. Didn't do much for me, honestly, at all. And then I'm looking at our forwards here. Zach Bolduc had a low amount of time, only with like 13 minutes. Neighbors had 13 minutes. Sonny had 12. Texier had 11. Walker and Alexi, they both had 13. Um, which at least to me is an issue. When you have players such as my boy Robert Thomas with 17 minutes, then you have Bushi with 18 minutes, Holloway with 18 minutes, Kyrie 17. You need to balance it out a little bit just so they're not too overworked. And then defensively, I told you that Tucker had 11 minutes. Colton Parayko was up with 24 minutes. Justin Falk, 24 minutes. Fowler, 23 minutes. And even Ryan Suter with 16 minutes. So just for the fun of it, too, Broberg had 17 minutes. But the reason why I'm bringing up ice time in a game like last night is because the Wild are an aggressive team, and you need players that can sustain all of the momentum that Minnesota is giving. I mean, I honestly was very disappointed. Um, I don't know. It just was not a good game, okay? So I was very frustrated by that. Jordan Kyrou also had 4 giveaways. Thomas had 4 giveaways. And again, when a player who is so valuable like Robert Thomas and even Jordan Kyrou, they do things like that with their giveaways. It's just a very frustrating situation. Now, Alexei Turchenko last night had 9 hits, so I mean, good for him. I mean, at least like he's being aggressive on the ice, but still, I'm not huge fan of just the aggressiveness without the results. But I guess that's why they have him on the team more than anything. But, anyways, when it comes to shots on goal, the team was still a little bit low. I mean, I know Tomer got one in, but he only had 2 shots on goal. Kyrou had 4 shots on goal. Bolduc had 4 shots on goal. But then you have players like a Dylan Holloway with 1, which I expected a little bit, not 1. I am definitely reading the wrong statistic. Because he had 2 assists last night. I can't see. They make these stat sheets so small, and I'm like, I cannot see. By the way, with faceoffs won, Robert Thomas did absolutely stellar. He won 11 out of 4. Nathan Walker, he's a beast on these faceoffs. Yeah, he won 11 out of 3, so 78% total for walks. He does a really good job on the faceoffs, by the way. Like, that is something about him that stands out. But yeah, overall, oh, my boy Ryan Suter also got an assist last night. I didn't mention that. I'm very proud of Suter. Overall, the reason why I give this game a D isn't because of the 4 goals in a row that the Blues scored. It is because of how the start of the game was, right? With Minnesota leading 2-0 before the even 3-minute mark. I know Bushi ended up scoring. And then it is the result and Minnesota being able to come back when the Blues regained, well, they never even had the lead, when they took the lead and had a 2-goal lead and completely gave it away. So that is why I give the game a D. I was disappointed, and that is what the D stands for disappointment. I was listening to Locked On Wild today for a little bit, trying to get the opponent's opinion, so to say. And I think the general consensus is that the Blues are not a good team, and that when the Wild decided that they wanted to win, they made sure it happened. And I was thinking about that for a little bit today because I was driving in my car listening to the podcast. And it's true. I mean, once the Wild really just began to play for the win, which you could kind of tell towards a little bit before the midway point of the second period, you could tell that there was a momentum shift. Maybe it's because of Flower coming on into the game. But either way, the team looked like, hey, we need to get our job done. And they just didn't stop with their relentlessness on the ice. So I do think and do believe that the Blues get looked at as a joke of a team against these other NHL teams. I mean, yes, the Wild are better than the Blues, but it's the Blues' own fault that they lost to the Wild because they could have won if they were better, but they're not. So I guess. But there is a bigger problem, and that is Jordan Binnington. We'll talk about it, but first, I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and share betting lines around your team or league. Just visit fanduel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. When I was watching Locked on Wild today, Seth did a post-game show. I wish I could stay up that late, but I cannot. And one of the comments that somebody said was the Team Canada for the Four Nation face-offs is going to lose now because of Binner. And I wanted to address that. I understand Jordan Binnington hasn't been playing as well. But as an outsider looking into the St. Louis Blues and maybe wanting some answers, let me give you some reassurance, right? Binner doesn't have a lot of support in front of him, okay? The defense on the Blues isn't that great. Now, granted, some of the stops or lack of stops in last night's contest were completely on him, no doubt about it whatsoever. But with the the Four Nations face-off, I should say, actually, he's going to have the best defenseman in front of him from Canada. But again, I understand what you're saying because he hasn't been playing the way that we all expect Jordan Binnington to play this season. I mean, last night, 25 shots on goal, 5 goals allowed because that one goal was an empty netter and saved 20. So his save percentage was only 800, which is not so good. We look at Binner on this season, okay? 11 wins, 15 losses, and 3 OTLs, 3 shootouts. He's tied for third in shootouts in the league, by the way. But when it comes to his record, he's tied for 21st. His save percentage is 896, so not so great. This season, the goals against average is about 3. So it hasn't been the best season for Jordan Binnington. And fantasy hockey too is actually not doing well, so I wouldn't put him on your team just because of that. But I think it does draw for concern because we look at Binner, right? From this season, last season. Last season, he did better. I mean, obviously, he was 28-21 and 5 OTLs, and his save percentage was like 913. Season prior, he had a save percentage of 894. We go back to the 2001-2022 season, only played in 37 games. However, he was 18-14-4. When we won the Stanley Cup that season, that was his best season in net, obviously. He was 24-5-1, okay? And his save percentage was 927. So he did really good that season. Cup champions. But this season, too, I just want to mention, I know I talked about shutouts. He is on track to do better than he has any other season. With 3 right now, he had 3 last season, but he got the 3 before he got the 3 last season. The most he ever had was, again, that Cup season, and he had 5 then. So just a little statistic breakdown of Jordan Binnington for you, because I do think that is important. This season, he did start in 29 games, played in 30, so he did have to go in that one time for Joel Hofer, which we already knew. But yeah, there is a problem 100% with Binner and maybe how it's been this season for him. I look at another goalie on the St. Louis Blues, and that is Joel Hofer, Binner's backup. And Joel Hofer, he hasn't played in as many games. He's 8-4-1. He's tied 35th in the NHL, obviously, because he hasn't played as much. His goal allows, same as Binner, about 3. However, his save percentage is .901, and he's had 1 shutout win. The reason why I mentioned this about Joel Hofer is obviously, he isn't as skilled, right, as Binner. I mean, if you look at the last time Joel Hofer played, it was actually in that bad loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Maybe not the best game to reference, but then he also won. But the Predators are not good. The point is, he's not bad, but you also have to look at who is in front of your netminders. And when you have players such as, and I hate to be like this person, such as a Tyler Tucker, that doesn't do much. But again, like I look at the Blues' defense and I'm like, how many excuses am I making? Because at the end of the day, the only player that I can really say is playing that poorly is Tucker. I think Suter's playing fine. Justin Folk is playing fine. Broberg doesn't do as much as I would have expected him to do, but it's fine. Fowler's been good, and Parayko's good. So then, when does the blame shift to the goalie and not to the defenseman? And that's my issue, is that I'm so quick to judge and to put blame on the Blues' defense. But the bigger problem is maybe these players individually, they might be good. However, the job is not getting done. So then what do the Blues do? Because the trade deadline is coming quicker than you might think, okay? That trade deadline, it is approaching. It is a couple months away. I was actually looking back, just some of the other teams that I cover, and there was a huge trade that happened 1 year ago today for another team that I do some stuff with. And I was like, oh, that was a little weird that happened in January. But then I think about it, the NHL this season has been really strange with trades early on. Usually we don't see trades until like late February and then early March. But for whatever reason, the trades this year have been crazy. And one of my favorite things to do is go on my NHL trade tracker website, because I love to see what's going on. I use Puckpedia. And in the 2025 season, there has only been 1 move, and that is the Pittsburgh Penguins acquiring Colton Pullman from the Sabres for Bennett MacArthur. So that's been the only single thing. And, I know the Blues traded P.O. Joseph to the Penguins, so the Penguins been kind of on the move. But yeah, it's been quiet to start off the new year, which honestly I'm not complaining about because I'm overwhelmed. There is a lot going on in the NHL. They also announced these 2 games, these outdoor games in Florida, and I absolutely hate it. So, Florida Stadium Series. Now, I don't know, again, what the plan is for the Winter Classic because I think it's really weird. But let me go tell you about this because I do think it's really strange. So the Florida Panthers will host. Oh, that's the Winter Classic? Okay. The Panthers will host the 2026 Winter Classic against the New York Rangers at the Miami Marlins Lone Depot Park on January 2nd. January 2nd? What? And then the Tampa Bay Lightning will host the Boston Bruins in the 2026 Stadium Series at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Raymond James Stadium on February 1st. What? They were trying to push hockey in Florida so badly. This is embarrassing. I'm just going to talk about hockey in St. Louis instead because that was embarrassing, honestly. I'm going to talk to you about my friends first, though, over at Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking on the Game Time app because I was looking for tickets to a hockey game. And with Game Time Picks, I found an amazing deal and could see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unforgettable prices. Plus, the app's all in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. The Blues host the Anaheim Ducks tomorrow, and it is a big game because the Blues will be honoring Cam Fowler with his 1,000th NHL game. Obviously, his 1,000th game was at the Winter Classic where he scored 2 goals, one on the power play. Very cool game for Cam Fowler. However, he will be taking on his former team for the first time since that trade on December 14th. And I'm sure for Cam, it'll be really nice to be honored with the team that he spent majority of his career with. He played 991 games with the Anaheim Ducks before the trade to St. Louis. So a lot of that obviously was time that he spent with the Ducks. So yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I love the way the NHL schedule is just so it worked out that way. And I love that the Blues wanted to wait for the Ducks in order to honor him. Really classy move. But yeah, overall, tomorrow's game, the Ducks, they're an okay team, right? Not so great. However, I still feel like the Blues will win. This will be a big game for Cam Fowler, so I feel like a Fowler goal will happen. He has been one of my favorite players on the Blues since St. Louis has acquired him, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does tomorrow. Um, it's funny. With the Anaheim Ducks, they've been in the headlines a lot. And they're just one of those teams where they do have some younger players who are super talented. It's just a matter of developing said players and dealing with maybe some injuries and some other things like that. But I think that the Blues are looking to maybe redeem themselves because things have not been treading in their direction whatsoever. And that's what makes me a little bit concerned about tomorrow's game because as confident as I am with the St. Louis Blues, right? I can't say for sure if they're going to win. I mean, they're right now in the midst of 2 games that they lost. Don't want to make it a streak with 3. And then after the Ducks, they're hosting the Blue Jackets, the Flames, and then the Flames again. It's the weirdest schedule in the planet. I don't make the rules. So a lot of work needs to be done. I'll do a game preview tomorrow before face off. I almost said tip off. I'm talking basketball. No, I'm watching basketball tonight. But yeah, I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.